When you stumble through the darkest corners of the world, you never know what nightmares you may come across or even find yourself in. There are stories out there that will chill you to the bone, and people out there that will make you think twice about who you meet in everyday life. So thank you for joining us in our world, Horror Motives, where we will bring you terrifying stories and close encounters, helping you find your fear and keep you up at night. If you love a chilling horror story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more disturbing stories and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new video being released. Now sit back, relax, and remember, fear lies within. I live in the UK, based in the North Yorkshire area. Where I live is a quite rural area in the countryside, with backroad country towns and greenery for miles. It's quiet, but also not a bad place to live. I was in the process of starting a clothing brand with my friend. To give you a little bit of insight to the type of style we were going for, it was like a gothic punk style. Antiquated clothing that's what we were into. That's going to come in handy so you understand the locations we would go to for photo shoots. Just starting out, I wanted to get some cool, eye-catching images for an Instagram page and a website to begin promoting our brand. So we'd heard about and found, just out of town in the countryside, an abandoned farm area located next to a forest. We planned on going there at night so we could get the images we wanted with the right mood and setting, the correct environment to represent our brand and style. There were three of us, me, my friend Kieran, and his girlfriend Amy, that we would be using as our female model, as she had the perfect look for what we were going for. It was around 10 p.m. and we were headed to the location. We were heading out late, as we were night owls anyway, and we were planning on having a few drinks and enjoying the night as well, while we were getting some cool pictures. We arrived at the dirt track road that led to the farm. It was gated off and locked, obviously, as it was now abandoned, but we could see it. It was literally a 2 to 3 minute walk up the track to our location. So we pulled the car up next to the gate, got our stuff, and walked up. The area was just what we were looking for. Creepy, worn, and battered. And there was still a rundown old tractor on the land that we used for a few pictures, too. I was the photographer, so I was in my element at this point. That's when Amy noticed on the tree line to the start of the forest, there was this long, battered, metal gated fence that stretched around the property. When we walked over, we could see a metal gate door broken and opening leading into the forest. It was a great backdrop for a picture. The door itself was broken open with a busted lock and was hanging half off its top hinge. And behind it were two metal sheets, clearly put there to block the entrance since the door was broke. But those two were dented, battered, and bent open so you could see the opening to the forest. We thought this was a great image for setting the mood for our style. So we began taking pictures. Amy would lean on the metal grid door holding it open as she posed and then go to the other side as if she was coming through. As I took the pictures, I looked back at one of the images and I thought I could see the outline of a figure next to one of the trees behind her. I took another picture, but with the background being so dark and further back, it looked the same, and I thought it must have been the shape of the tree. That's when Kieran told us all to be quiet and listen, as he thought he could hear something. As we listened, we could hear in the distance in the forest area what seemed to be whistling. Not like the wind whistling, but a person whistling. We all stood there for a minute looking into the forest behind the door, but the whistling stopped. As I was about to say something, it started up again, but sounded further away. We found this strange, but being 19, we were intrigued and wanted to know what it was. The only way to explain this is at the time we were fucking idiots. I thought, hey, there's three of us. Let's go check it out and see what the whistling is. The other two were also curious and agreed with me. And with that, we made our way through the holes in the metal planks and slowly entered the forest area. It was pretty much pitch black, and we didn't have a torch, so literally all we had was my camera flash and the crap lights on our iPhones. If you've had one of those, you know how bad the light on them can be. It hardly lights up anything. We listened out for the whistling, slowly moving in the direction it had come from. We couldn't hear anything now. I thought back to the pictures I took about 5 minutes before of the outline I'd saw by the tree. That's when I suddenly thought to myself, shit, what if someone was actually watching us? I know I was slow to think that, but as I said, I was in the moment and intrigued. Freaking myself out with my thoughts, I turned to the others and was about to say, let's head back, when the whistling started back up again. Only this time, louder and closer. Not only that, but now it was coming from behind us the way we came. Standing there motionless, we all began to feel on edge. My heart was pounding so fast as the anxiety took over me. The whistling suddenly stopped and the figure just stood there. Silence now engulfed us until only the rustling of the leaves broke it. I lifted my cameras. The only way to see what it was using my flash. It was like my finger didn't want to press that button out of fear of not wanting to see. But as I did, what we saw with that flash scared the shit out of us. The flash went off, revealing a huge, slender, crazed-looking old man smiling at us from ear to ear. He literally looked psychotic. He was holding what looked to be a long carving knife in his hand. He let out an aggressive scream as he broke into a run towards us. Amy screamed as Kieran shouted out for us to run. The only way we could go was further through the forest. We sprinted as fast as we all could while hearing the footsteps and the crazy laugh following us. We didn't know where the hell we were going, but we didn't stop, going as fast as we could, crashing through branches as we did. After running for what seemed to be forever, in distance between us and the psycho chasing us, I whispered for my friends to lower themselves into a little bit of a clearing just behind a big tree. In the dark, out of sight, terrified, we all hid there, trying to get as low as we could. Kieran covered Amy's mouth as to try and stop her from crying out so loud. I may have been slow thinking earlier to get myself into this horrifying situation, but I was sure going to try to make up for it and get us out of this nightmare. I had a spare blank SD card on me for my camera, so I took out the one that had the content on it and put the blank one in. I told my friends I was going to set up the camera on a self-timer in a different location opposite us, but a good distance away. The max I could do was 30 seconds. When it went off, we could wait to see what happened next and then run back the way we came, hoping that it might divert some attention. I creeped out slowly. I couldn't see anyone as I crawled my way over to the opposite trees. I set up the camera on a timer. Then at that moment again, I could hear the whistling, and this crazed fuck started to bark like a dog, probably trying to scare us out of hiding. Adrenaline pumped through my body as I crawled back to my friends and hid. We could hear whoever was chasing us walking close through the forest. The self-timer felt like it went on forever in that moment. But then, the flash lit up the area it was in, and as it did, we heard the man break into a run right in the direction of the light. As we saw him come into sight and pass us, we didn't wait too long before we broke out into the fastest sprint of our lives back the way we came. I felt like I was going to pass out, but couldn't stop for the fear of being caught. We reached the fence leading into the farm and followed it along until we found the door we had come through. We broke through and ran straight back to the car, not before looking back one more time to see the man on the other side of the fence, closely following. We dove into the car and pulled off, driving the hell out of there, thankful that we never split up or lost each other. I have never been as scared as I was that night. My camera truly did save our lives. We never went back to that place, never wanting to see that man again. What I learned from that night was not to be so naive ever again. So if you're out in a rural area and you hear a strange noise or whistling, please don't bother going to check it out. I'm from Quebec, Canada, and I was traveling Europe by myself. I'm a 28-year-old male, and at the time of this event, I was 25, so it was about 3 years ago this happened to me. I was traveling across a host of European countries while I had the opportunity to do so, and have some great experiences, trying out new places while I was free and single. Traveling alone, if you like your own company, isn't as daunting as people make it out to be, but it does come with some risks. At the time, I was in Italy and I was set to take my overnight train that I'd booked to Germany, which was my next stop, before heading to the Netherlands to meet up with some friends I knew in Amsterdam. I had just had a great time in Italy, saw some great sights and met some really cool people. Now, at the time I was headed for my train, which I'd booked a bunk compartment for myself, as the journey was going to be a long one and required a few stops, so I planned ahead to get some rest and a little bit of sleep while I was on my journey. The train was standard. I didn't book anything fancy, as I was on a budget trying to live on the cheap, but it would serve its purpose, and it was only for a night. Anyway, I boarded the train and I couldn't find anyone to show my ticket to so I could be directed to my compartment. It took me at least 5 minutes of walking around before I saw a staff member, and they were able to direct me to where I needed to go, but they did it with a little bit of attitude, like I disturbed them having a conversation. I didn't let it bother me, and I soon forgot about it, and I made my way to my cabin, which happened to be right at the back end of the train, the opposite side to where I had gotten on. As I made my way down through the cabins, I noticed the train was pretty unclean, and the passengers that were on it were not the type to give a shit, and quite frankly, I think they were kind of the cause of the mess. I passed a few people on the way down to my cabin, and I got a few moody looks. I was out of place, clearly, as not many people were from my side of the world, and many of the passengers didn't speak English, with a lot of them seeming to be Eastern European. I reached my cabin not before bumping into someone, and as I apologized, they just looked at me, staring angrily for a minute before talking to me in a language I didn't understand. And to be honest, I'm a nice, laid-back guy and try to get on with anybody. But I did feel uneasy at this point, regretting taking the cheaper option and wishing I'd paid a little bit more for a more comfortable journey. I thought to myself I would just stick to my compartment, as I had it to myself, get my head down and sleep the journey away. So that's what I did. I grabbed myself a few drinks, got comfy, and planned on staying in my zone all night, only leaving if I needed the toilet, as the toilets were communal. Later that night, at just under the halfway mark of the journey, I kept tossing and turning as I tried to fall into a proper sleep because, at the time, I'd just been drifting in and out of sleep. The type of sleep where you suddenly wake yourself up feeling like you're falling. I mean, if you've ever had that. And it having been noisy throughout the cabin with what sounded like a group of rowdy guys. It was about midnight where I managed to drift off again. But that's when I woke up again to a sound of what I thought was rustling in my compartment. The room was pitch black as I turned the light off and the blind was down. So I got up to turn the light on. Looking around, I noticed my door was off the latch, which was strange, as I had definitely locked it. I looked around the compartment, which was obviously small, so I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. So I locked my door back up, thinking it must have been faulty. I then laid back down and went back to sleep. As I'd managed to fall back into a light sleep, it was then around an hour since I'd gotten up to check my door. I woke up to the sound of what seemed to be someone making an awful crying sound. I was facing the wall, and honestly, the fear crippled me. I heard this moaning cry coming from right behind me. Not outside my door now, but actually in my compartment. I froze, too afraid to turn around. The room, again, dark with the light off. I thought, who the fuck is in my compartment? That's when the crying changed into someone speaking. It was a male voice speaking in a language I didn't understand. As much as I didn't want to, I had no option but to turn and see who the hell it was. With my heart pounding, as unnoticeably as I could, I grabbed my phone out of my pocket as it was in my trousers I was sleeping in, and rolled over, shining the light into the compartment. And as I did, I let out a hysterical scream when I saw what the noise was. I had come face to face with a half-naked man in my compartment who was hovering over me with wide eyes as he held a knife over me and had blood on his chest, speaking in a loud foreign language. Fearing for my life, I kicked out, aiming for the man, jumping off my bed as I barged into this intruder as he swung the knife at me, cutting my arm. I'm not a small guy, so when I got up, barging into him, luckily for me, it knocked the man off his balance and he fell swinging the knife. Scared out of my mind, not willing to wait around and see what happened next, I burst out of my compartment screaming for help and assistance as I ran down the cabin. Looking behind me, the man never followed me out of the compartment. I found staff on the train, begging for help, explaining what had happened. Some passengers in my cabin heard the commotion and came out of their compartments, seeing the blood trail. They held my cabin door too, locking the man in there. The police were notified and met the train at the next stop, coming aboard and arresting the man. As I watched him leave the train, he glared at me with hatred in his eyes. He shouted towards me again in a language I didn't understand. The police took my statement of what happened, then explained to me what they had discovered. He was a Russian man, and out of everything else, what they told me next scared me more than anything. They told me that upon inspecting my cabin, there were satanic symbols drawn on the wall in blood. I hadn't seen that as the light was off and I left so fast. The man was a cult worshiper and had seen me, followed me, and was going to use me as a sacrifice. It was found that the man had snuck on the train with the lack of staff awareness, managed to pick my lock while I was asleep. He hid under my bed, and that must have been when I first noticed the door. I'm so lucky I was a light sleeper, as if I had not awoken at the time, I sure as hell wouldn't be telling you this story today. So when traveling alone, please look after yourself. You honestly don't know who's out there. I've since traveled alone again, but I'm always switched on now and have never taken a cheap night train to travel since. And that's gonna do it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please let us know by liking the video. It really helps us out. And don't forget to subscribe to Horror Motives and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. If you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, let us know down in the comments. Until then, the fear lies within.